in a weird way, fiat currencies and the changing regimes has always been about who had the greatest offense. You went to some other land and you were able to basically take over, right? And you had military victory on their land, and therefore now you are the dominant military, and so you get to put the global reserve currency in place. In the cyber world, it's not all about offense, it's actually about defense. And so in that way, my thought process has always been, and I'm actively looking to have it disproven, right? Like this is something where it's like, man, this is interesting, but I don't think we have enough time to really kind of yes or no it. If defense is the most important thing, actually the strongest defense will then lead to the global reserve currency, and nothing is more defendable or decentralized or stronger than the Bitcoin network. And so could it be the first global reserve currency that rises to that status without ever shooting a bullet, dropping a bomb, creating any sense of violence? And that doesn't stop violence from, Russia, Ukraine, I don't think is necessarily happening right now over global reserve status of a currency. So not all violence goes away, but in some way, a global reserve currency being established with no violence is like fascinating to me.
I see. Yeah. I'm trying to think of counter examples to that statement.
This is why I like talking to you, because I knew that's what you were thinking.
I don't. My knowledge of history isn't that great about it, but I know that I think that in recent memory, I mean, we've had 3 global reserve things that's operated like global reserve currencies, dominant global currencies. The most recent being the U.S. dollar, and prior to that, it was the British pound. And prior to that, my understanding, it was the Dutch currency. The Netherlands had the Netherlands, of course, was a tremendous economic power. I think in the 17th century, if historians out there can correct me on that century. The Dutch were, as far as I know, were not. I don't think. I guess they did colonize here or there, but they weren't a mighty global power. But they were a mighty commercial power. And so I don't know if that's a kind of a counterexample. My point is that these two things seem hard to separate. It's true that the British Empire was the most powerful militarily, but they were also the most powerful economically. Likewise, it's the same is true of the United States. But I wonder if those two things are necessarily wedded. Maybe so. I'd have to think about it. But your insight here about defense being so attractive, in that there's no elected leader of Bitcoin. There's nobody who's going to go out and fight and use Bitcoin, the power of Bitcoin seniors to finance global conquest. That this is just a protocol, just by its sheer design and the properties in its design, is going to attract people. And that's going to become powerful precisely because it's very peaceful. In fact, it's agnostic, and it's just a robot, to be quite honest. That would be very interesting to see that emerge for that reason. Do you think that is a reasonable shot of happening? And if so, what would be your timeline for something like this?
Timeline is impossible.
Yeah. We might not be around to see it, but who knows? Who knows what might happen? I mean,
I think that my memory will fail me here, but I think it was 2017 or 2018. There was a couple of countries, for some reason I want to say like Argentina and name whatever other country, that decided to do some test settlement of bilateral trade in Bitcoin. Now, before everyone gets excited, this was like $10,000, right? This was like literally didn't even matter for either country. But just the fact that they were even willing to try it, announce it, etc., was interesting to me. You see El Salvador obviously doing this. We haven't talked about mining and kind of some of these very oil-rich countries that may actually use it as some ability to monetize some of that energy in a much more cost-effective way. One of the kind of negative sides of some of this is I had a gentleman from the economics department of Harvard who was saying, look, Bitcoin, after the sanctions on Russia, now enters the conversation as a sanctions hedge for many countries. Along those same lines, there's a report. I will say it's unconfirmed because I haven't been able to find the exact source material, but it was pretty popular by a number of people I trust on Twitter, that there has been an explosion of ASIC kind of Bitcoin mining hardware orders inside of Russia. And so if you sanction them off, you don't let them really kind of engage in the energy markets, they have surplus energy, they want to monetize it. Well, one great way to do it may be through an apolitical, kind of monetary system where they can literally monetize it at the point of the energy production. You kind of start seeing some of these data points and you're like, look, again, it is nearly impossible to predict the future. In fact, I would argue it is impossible to predict the future, but there's enough data points that suggest more countries are going to embrace this in the future than less. And so if that is the path, well, maybe actually Bitcoin is the first technology of our lifetime that's been globally adopted by individuals before nation states, right? If you think of most technologies, whether it's internet, computers, whatever, it's like the military, then nation states, then corporations, and then finally someone got the PC to be on everyone's desktop, right? And they got the cost down and all this stuff. There's like no nation state, right? I mean, literally, you're the first central banker in the world that I think either you or I know of to do a public presentation on Bitcoin in 2014. That was 5 years of individuals around the world running around trying to figure out what this thing was. And frankly, some of them got it right. Some of them, there's the classic tweets that go viral all the time where the guy's like, so glad I sold my Bitcoin at $3, right? It's now 50 cents. So this stuff's hard, even if you're early. But it does kind of point to this world of like, Bitcoin will become, in my opinion, more important in the future. What does that mean in terms of the day-to-day usage? I have no clue. Right. And I think that's maybe where I differ from some folks in the Bitcoin community is I think they are adamant about, 100% it is going to be the global reserve currency. I'm probably in the camp of like, there's a higher probability I would assign to it than many other people I know in finance or technology. But I don't know if I would be comfortable saying 100%. Right. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I would never say never, first of all. And I don't think it's likely within my lifetime, which admittedly is not that long for you youngsters out there, but you'd have to ask the question. First of all, I think it's ironic that the ability of Russia to avail of itself of this is not exactly something I'd call to promoting peace. But anyways, you'd have to think, about certain countries, about their political institutions, how they're set up, and the propensity of the local, of the representatives or tyrants in some case of their propensity to permit their citizenry to utilize this technology. Oh, but how are you going to prevent it? I mean, you just access it through the internet and blah blah blah. Well, and they can't appropriate it either, right? Not directly. Well, I'm afraid, if you've got a despot, I they can take some pretty dramatic measures. I mean, they won't know your private key, but they'll take your daughter and string her up in a tree, and then you'll have a choice. You can submit your private key or not. It's true. So I don't know whether, for these reasons, I mean, these base human instincts or these jurisdictions where you get these governments that are just tyrants are probably not going to permit Bitcoin to become universal in the sense that perhaps some people hope. And even if it did become universal, like I said, Bitcoin will not solve the problem of despotism or tyranny. But who knows? I mean, I see the argument that you're making, and I share with you. I think it's going to spread. And indeed, like I said, even alluded to earlier, even if Bitcoin itself doesn't spread, but I do believe it will spread. The adoption is still relatively early. That Bitcoin-inspired projects will spread as well. So Bitcoin itself, I don't know. Let's see if these Bitcoin masks turn out to be right.